Imagine, if you will, a world quite different from our own. This was Earth some 5 million years ago. It was a warmer, wetter planet. Great forests stretched from pole to pole, teeming with life forms we might scarcely recognize. There were no vast ice caps at the poles. Instead, the oceans held sway, their waters flowing in a global dance. The Atlantic and the Pacific, two mighty bodies of water, were not separated as they are today. A deep, wide seaway, known as the Central American Seaway, allowed their waters to mingle. This constant exchange created a world of gentle, uniform climates. Life in these connected oceans was a marvel of biodiversity. Marine creatures could travel unimpeded between the great water basins: corals, mollusks, fish. Their populations spread across vast distances. The gentle currents carried larvae from the Caribbean to the Pacific, and from the Pacific, back to the Caribbean. This constant genetic flow ensured that life on both sides shared a common heritage. It was a world of oceanic unity, a vast, interconnected web of marine life. The process was agonizingly slow, taking place over millions of years, yet its consequences were dramatic and absolute. The chain of volcanic islands, born from the fire below, began to grow. Sediment, washed down from the burgeoning mountains of North and South America, started to fill the gaps between them. Rivers carried silt and sand, depositing them in the shallowing waters, slowly building up the foundations of a new world. What was once a deep channel became a series of shallow straits, then a swampy archipelago, and then finally, solid land. The gateway between the oceans was closing, inch by painful inch. The world was witnessing the birth of the Isthmus of Panama. This geological event was a turning point of monumental proportions. Around 3 million years ago, the final gap was sealed. The Atlantic and the Pacific, once joined, were now torn apart. The free-flowing exchange of water that had defined the planet's circulatory system for eons came to an abrupt halt. It was as if a great dam had been erected in the heart of the global ocean. The consequences of this closure would ripple outwards, touching every corner of the globe, from the deepest oceans to the highest mountains, and would fundamentally alter the course of life on every continent. Before the rise of Panama, the ocean currents were sluggish and diffuse. Warm tropical water flowed westwards from the Atlantic into the Pacific. A gentle dispersal of heat kept global temperatures relatively stable. But with the seaway now blocked, this westward flow was denied its ancient path. The warm, salty water of the tropical Atlantic had nowhere to go but north. It began to pile up in the Caribbean. It began to pile up in the Gulf of Mexico, like water building behind a dam. This immense buildup created a powerful new current, a river of warmth within the ocean. The birth of the Gulf Stream as we know it. The intensified current snaked up the eastern coast of North America. It carried tremendous heat and moisture, acting as a colossal conveyor belt for the planet's climate. As it moved north, the water from the tropics was unusually salty from high evaporation. That salinity was crucial. Salty water is denser than fresh. As the Gulf Stream reached the frigid North Atlantic, it began to cool. Cooling plus high salinity made the water incredibly dense, with global consequences. The Gulf Stream brought a wave of warmth to otherwise much colder regions. Western Europe, for instance, owes its mild climate to this river of heat. Without it, London would have winters like Labrador, Canada. The strengthening of the Gulf Stream had an immediate and honestly kind of paradoxical effect. It carried warmth northward, and it also delivered an unprecedented amount of moisture into the cold air of the high latitudes. That moisture fell not as rain, but as snow. Year after year, the snowfall in the north became heavier and more persistent. Summers were warmed slightly by the current, but were no longer long or warm enough to melt all the winter snow. A little more snow remained each year, accumulating, compressing under its own weight, and slowly, inexorably, turning into ice. The great ice sheets were beginning to grow. This marked the start of the Pleistocene, the Ice Ages. Snow accumulation in the northern hemisphere began forming vast continental glaciers. These were not mountain glaciers, but immense sheets of ice, miles thick. They covered huge swathes of North America, Europe, Asia. While the oceans were being divided, the continents were being united. The newly formed Isthmus of Panama became a corridor, a highway for life between two worlds. This sparked the Great American Biotic Interchange. Animals from North America began to trickle south. South America's fauna began to venture north. The two evolutionary stories were about to collide. From the north came highly adapted, competitive creatures, herds of horses, camels, tapirs. They were followed by formidable predators, jaguars, pumas, saber-toothed cats, which found a land teeming with new and perhaps naive prey. Bears, raccoons, peccaries, diversifying and spreading throughout the southern continent. These northern invaders were products of a harsher, more competitive world. They were in many ways battle-hardened. The impact of Panama's rise was not confined to the Americas. Its influence reached across the Atlantic, setting in motion a chain of events that would have the most profound consequences of all: the shaping of our own human story. The same climatic changes that brought ice to the north cast a long shadow over the continent of Africa. The replumbing of the world's oceans, the birth of the Gulf Stream, the cooling of the planet, all contributed to a significant drying trend across the African continent. The world was becoming a cooler, drier place, and Africa was no exception. The lush, continuous tropical rainforests that had once stretched across the equator began to shrink and fragment. They retreated, leaving behind a new and different kind of environment: the savanna. For the creatures that lived in the trees, this was a catastrophe. Their world was disappearing, broken into isolated pockets of forest, separated by vast, dangerous plains. For our distant ancestors, the primates who made their home in the canopy, the story of the Isthmus of Panama is a powerful reminder of the intricate web of connections that governs our planet. It is a story of how one geological event, in one small corner of the world, can have consequences that ripple across the globe and through millions of years of time. The slow, grinding uplift of the seafloor between North and South America did not just create a strip of land. It re-engineered the entire Earth system in a cascade of cause and effect that is honestly breathtaking in its scale and complexity. It is a thread that connects geology, oceanography, climate biology, and ultimately, our own origins. Let us trace this thread one final time. The rise of the isthmus first sundered the oceans, creating the Atlantic, creating the Pacific, and triggering a mass extinction of marine life. This oceanic wall then redirected the flow of warm, salty water, giving birth to the mighty Gulf Stream. This powerful new current, in turn, transported immense quantities of moisture to the north, feeding the growth of the great polar ice caps, plunging the planet into the ice ages. The world grew colder, sea levels fell, and the rhythm of our planet's climate was forever changed. All because a seaway was closed. At the same time, the land bridge created by the isthmus opened a door between two continents. It sparked the Great American Biotic Interchange, a vast migration of animals that led to new competition, new ecosystems, and widespread extinction, reshaping the biological landscape of two continents. And the global cooling, an echo of Panama's rise, reached across to Africa. It caused the great forests to shrink and the savannas to expand, forcing our own primate ancestors out of the trees and onto 2 feet. This crucial adaptation, the foundation of human evolution. The outcome of this great exchange was profoundly unequal. The northern species were, on the whole, far more successful. They radiated across South America, driving many of the native species to extinction. The unique southern mammals, which had evolved in isolation without major predators, were often no match for the efficient hunters from the north. While some southern creatures carved out a niche for themselves in the north, armadillo, porcupine, opossum, the traffic was overwhelmingly one-sided. The land bridge that had created so much new opportunity had also brought competition and extinction, forever changing the face of life in the Americas. This was a moment of crisis and opportunity. The trees were becoming farther apart, and the resources within them scarcer. To survive, they had to travel between these wooded islands, and that meant crossing the open savanna. This was a perilous place, home to large, fast predators. Moving on all fours, the traditional method of primate locomotion was slow and inefficient in this new environment. It also kept their heads low, making it difficult to spot danger or opportunity from a distance. The pressure to adapt was immense. A new way of moving, a new way of seeing the world, was needed. And so, driven by the changing landscape, our ancestors began to do something revolutionary. They began to stand up and walk on two legs. Bipedalism, the act of walking upright, offered enormous advantages on the savanna. It freed the hands to carry food, carry tools, carry infants. It raised the head, allowing for a better view over the tall grasses to spot predators or locate resources. It was also a more energy-efficient way to travel long distances. This pivotal shift in our evolution, the very step that set us on the path to becoming human, was a direct consequence of the changing African climate. A climate that had been altered by the rise of a small land bridge half a world away. From the chilling of the poles, to the competition between saber-toothed cats and terror birds, and from the course of a river in the sea, to the first upright steps of our ancestors on the African plains, all these stories lead back to Panama. The world we inhabit today, with its climate, its oceans, and its distribution of life, was forged by this event. It is a profound lesson in planetary interconnectedness, demonstrating that no part of our world exists in isolation. The silent, slow rise of a narrow land bridge serves as a testament to the immense and often hidden power of our living Earth. The Great American Bifurcation, how the Isthmus of Panama forged the modern world. 5 million years ago,